Then on Sports Central, we go for our 2022 college football predictions for the Wake Forest Demon Deacons, one of the top teams in the ACC in the 2021 season, as this team went 11-3 overall. But how will this team be in 2022? Will this team once again reach the level that they were at last season? That's what we'll be going over here today. We'll be analyzing this team and predicting our schedule game by game in this video, starting out with your team trends. Wake Forest 11-3 last season. They were 7-0 in their first 7 games, 4-3 in their last 7. So, I mean, this team was one of the last undefeated teams in the FBS last season, which was pretty unexpected. I mean, Wake Forest, I definitely thought they'd be a good team last season, but I mean, 11 wins was certainly a surprise for many, including myself. But yeah, good for this team, good for this program to see them have some success here. Beat Virginia 37-17. That was a great win on September 24th. Beat Army 70-56 on October 23rd. That was a shootout. They had a lot of high-scoring games last season. I mean, this offense was really good. Their defense maybe lacked at some points, but their offense overall, I mean, it got it done. Beat NC State, number 16 team in the nation at the time. They're 45-42. They also beat Boston College 41-10 in the last game of the regular season. Lost to Pittsburgh in the ACC championship. This team won their division and got to the ACC title game. Lost to Pitt, so the Panthers ended up winning the title. But certainly, I mean, that's a big deal for Wake Forest to win that division and get, or at least have a chance to win an ACC title. And they ended up beating Rutgers in their bowl game 38-10. Certainly the bowl situation was tough. They were supposed to play, I think, Texas A&M, but the Aggies pulled out. So they ended up playing Rutgers and just beat up Rutgers big time, 38-10 in the end. So certainly the bowl game could have been better for Wake Forest. I feel like this team deserved a better matchup versus playing Rutgers. But in the end, Wake Forest got it done, and it was a good season. But this team they've got a chance to return to the same level that they were at last season. Looking at your returning production, your roster preview, Sam Hartman's coming back, who was a key player for this team last season, putting up 4,200 yards, 39 touchdowns, 14 picks, and a 59% completion rate. He was an excellent quarterback last season. And of course, he kind of had some time off there when Jamie Newman was starting for Wake Forest, but he's been a part of the program since 2018, and he's played a decent amount in each season since then. So this is going to be his 5th season with Wake Forest, and certainly there are high expectations for him going into 2022 because of how much talent he has. I mean, 39 touchdowns over 14 picks, and I mean 39 touchdowns in general, and 4,200 yards. Very impressive out of Sam Hartman. He also put up 11 touchdowns on the ground, so he had 50 total touchdowns last season and 360 yards. I mean, he is certainly a quarterback who, I mean, this offense scored a lot last season, so you can see why his stats were so insane. But I mean, this offense in general was just really good. Christian Beal, he is transferring away, so you do lose your top running back from last season who put up 650 yards and 7 touchdowns, but you do return your second running back, Justice Ellison, who put up over 570 yards and 8 touchdowns last season. And Christian Turner is also coming back, so there's plenty of depth in the backfield with Christian Turner and Justice Ellison, plus Sam Hartman rushes the ball a bit too. So I'm not too concerned about Christian Beal transferring out. The receiving core, A.T. Perry is coming back, your top receiver from last season, 1,200 yards, nearly 1,300 and 15 touchdowns last season. You do lose your second receiver in Jakari Robertson, who put up last season just over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. But you do return your third receiver in Taylor Marin, who put up 620 yards and 5 touchdowns. So you get your top and your third receivers coming back. And you do lose your second there, but certainly, the receiving core, I mean, you still got some good depth there. The running back situation looks good, and of course, Sam Hartman coming back. I mean, this offense looks good once again going to next season, considering how good this offense was in the 2021 season. You would think, I mean, because Wake Forest, this is a team that kind of surprised a bit, so you would think they're losing a lot of talent, but they're really not. I mean, this team is returning a lot of their key players, and things look pretty good for Wake Forest going into next season. You lose 1 offensive lineman, 1 defensive lineman, 3 linebackers, and 1 in the secondary. So even defensively, you lose 5. It's not bad. The linebacking situation isn't quite as deep, but I mean, otherwise the defense looks good. The defense could definitely be even better next season. And it brings up the question, will this team potentially be an ACC champion next season? That is definitely within question for Wake Forest. This is a team that, I mean, Clemson next season is certainly going to be good. NC State's going to be good. I think the big 3 in the ACC are going to be Wake Forest, Clemson, and NC State. Pitt could be decent, but I don't expect them to be quite as good. I feel like I feel like losing Kenny Pickett's going to have a huge impact. And they're still going to be good, but they're not going to be quite as good. And, I mean, once again, Wake Forest, and I like Wake Forest and how they're looking better than Pitt for next season. But, yeah, this team, I like how this team looks going to next season. It's certainly, I mean, the ACC, I mean, it's a competitive conference. It certainly is, I mean, it's a challenge, but Wake Forest is definitely in contention to win an ACC title next season. Of course, they got to get past Clemson and NC State. That Atlantic division is definitely much tougher and much more competitive than the Coastal division for next season. But transfer portal and recruiting, really nothing too much out of the transfer portal. You got a few players leaving. You don't really bring in anybody from the transfer portal other than Kobe Turner, defensive lineman from Richmond. But you lose Zion Keith, safety. Billy Edwards really didn't have a big impact, but he's off to Maryland. Hardiman, defensive back, is in the transfer portal. Christian Beal, once again, mentioned him. He is off to South Carolina. DJ Taylor, linebacker, is in the transfer portal. Kenneth Dix III, defensive back, is in the transfer portal. And Amani Marshall, running back, is off to App State. Recruiting-wise, 71st in the nation, 13th in the ACC. You got 2 4-stars and 11 3-stars coming in for next season. So the recruiting isn't great. And the transfer portal obviously really doesn't help this team either. So, I mean, you don't really get any depth from the recruiting. But this team is set up to win. If there's going to be any season that Wake Forest is a potential national contender, this is going to be the one. I mean, this might be it. This might be it for a little while. I feel like Wake Forest, and you got Sam Hartman, and you got this offense, and the defense is potentially only going to get better. I mean, this team could very well. I mean, this team could be a dark horse national contender. The way things are looking, and as long as they don't disappoint, I mean, this team they've got the talent, they've got the potential to be a dark horse national contender next season. They're definitely an ACC contender. I mean, things look really good for Wake Forest going to next season. They're returning production and their transfer portal and recruiting. You don't get much depth there, but I mean, this team is set up to win in 2022. I mean, this is going to be the year. If it's going to be any year for Wake Forest, this is going to be the one coming up here in 2022. But looking at your schedule now, going to next season, you start the season against VMI on September 1st. And then you got Vanderbilt on the road on the 10th as one of your non-conference games, then Liberty after that coming to town. So you got your 3 non-conference games there. And you also got Army. That's your 4th non-conference game on October 8th. You got Clemson, a huge conference matchup. That is your first conference matchup of the season. You got Clemson at home this season. So that's a huge... I mean, that's a big deal. That's a massive game there because, I mean, that game on September 24th could very well determine who wins that division. So, I mean, NC State can't forget about them either. But, I mean, Clemson especially, I mean, that's a team that improved a lot over the course of last season. They're probably my favorite to win the ACC right now. But, yeah, that's going to be a huge game coming up there in week 4. Then Florida State on the road, Army, Boston College at home, Louisville on the road. Then you got NC State on the road, huge game to start off your November. North Carolina, Syracuse, and then Duke on the road to finish out your season. So looking at September here, VMI, easy win. Vanderbilt, easy win. Liberty, also easy win. So you get your first 3 games, all easy wins. You take care of all 3 opponents by a couple of touchdowns or more. Clemson, that is a huge matchup. That is pretty much a coin toss for me right now. I feel like Wake Forest having that game at home that helps out Wake Forest as well. And I feel like that's going to be as big of a game as we've seen for Wake Forest. And I mean, it's going to be terribly close, but I just feel more confident picking Clemson right now. I mean, Clemson next season is a team that's also returning a lot of their key players, and considering how much they improved over the course of the 2021 season, I definitely see that team being once again a national contender. So I will take Clemson to win that matchup. So you're 3-1 heading into October. And then you got Florida State on the road to start off your October. That's going to be a close one. I do think Florida State puts up a fight in that matchup, but in the end, Wake Forest gets the win. And certainly that's a game that you want to win. Coming off that Clemson loss to give yourself a chance to still win the division, got to win that game, and I do think you do beat Florida State. You beat Army the next week by a couple of touchdowns. Beat Boston College, beat Louisville, so you go undefeated through your October. You're 7-1, heading into November in pretty good shape, and that's a huge matchup on the road against NC State. That is a road game, and NC State is a team that I certainly think, once again, the big 3 in the ACC next season, I do think will be Clemson, NC State, and Wake Forest. And, I mean, it just so happens that all 3 of those teams are in the same division. So, I mean, it's going to be very competitive, and Clemson, NC State, and Wake Forest when those matchups happen between those 3 teams, certainly each one is going to be crucial. And NC State on the road, I do think NC State does win that matchup. Certainly, I feel like the Wolfpack next season are I mean, Devin Leary coming back. That's going to be a really good football team next season, and I'm more confident picking NC State with them being at home in that matchup. If Wake Forest was at home, I'd pick Wake Forest in that matchup. That's how close it is. That's how close it is. But Clemson, I mean, that matchup certainly is very winnable as well for Wake Forest, but I'm just more confident in the talent of Clemson in that situation. North Carolina, then, on the 12th, you beat the Tar Heels in a closer one. And then you got Syracuse and Duke to finish out your regular season, both very winnable games. And you beat both teams by a couple of touchdowns. So that puts you at 10-2 for next season. I think 10 wins is very manageable for this team. 10-2 is extremely likely. I mean, even 11 wins is certainly within reach. And, I mean, who knows, even 12. But, I mean, the talent on this team is for real. And I really like Sam Hartman. I really like this team. And, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing how they do. Definitely a very intriguing team, considering they've basically come out of nowhere in the past couple of years. And, I mean, they were really good in 2021, got up to 11 wins last season. And suddenly this team is looking, once again, really good going into 2022. But let me know your thoughts and comments below on Wake Forest, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.